Hey! Hi! How you doing? This is not the Gamertron, but this is the Gamertron Show. Today I've been given a task. A task that, while GT is down from having tried to eat a roof from a house, I'm happily willing to lend a hand. Don't worry, this is all temporary in case you guys missed that lovely screeching voice. Alright, I kid, but it is only temporary. I hope you guys will give me a small chance. Who am I, you ask? Well, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and I generally cover a lot of Destiny content, mainly within its story and lore. I'm trying to branch out, so let me know in those comments below if you guys know of any long-term games I could get into with story in mind. If not, I hope you'll appreciate my take on today's topic. That topic? The importance of villains within video games. Oftentimes we get so caught up with the heroes that we almost only remember the heroes within a game, but the villains are what the heroes need to fight against. I mean, it's just common sense, sure, but this can vary from small combat to global incidents. It can also vary from a single person to a large army or force, but almost always led by those at the top. Sometimes it's entirely different, like implied enemies or a force of nature. I tend to think back on a quote that Leonard Nimoy had said about Star Trek during the commentary for A Voyage Home, the fourth movie in the original series. I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but it's to the effect of Star Trek didn't always have a bad guy that we went up against. Sometimes it was against social issues or environmental struggle, something like that. It's not always us against a big bad. Oh, I should mention, I tend to get a bit derailed in my talks, by the by, but I do have a point. Give me a moment. In the movie The Wrath of Khan, another Star Trek movie of course, we saw the death of Spock, but the birth of a new world. It dealt with the Enterprise's greatest enemy, Kanunian Singh, a man that wanted to see Captain Kirk dead for leaving them alone, but just, frankly, to assert his dominance over Starfleet. Even if you don't know Star Trek, you can still understand the impact that losing a main character like Spock has on a story. Then we get to search for Spock in the third movie. Kirk and the crew recover Spock thanks to some sci-fi fantasy tomfoolery on this new planet, but in doing so, he loses his son, David. This is at the hands of the Klingons, and might I say that Christopher Lloyd makes a wonderful Klingon. Seriously, the movie's worth it just to see Doc Brown from Back to the Future as a Klingon. No joke. While they recover Spock, it's not the same man as they had known before, and the journey to relearn what he was is what leads us to The Voyage Home, again the fourth movie in the series. Here we see a space probe sent out to communicate with a certain species on planet Earth. Issue is, this space probe from an unknown alien life form causes havoc within our solar system, causing power outages system-wide. The crew of the Enterprise are still off-world and are going to try to do something to save Starfleet. Otherwise, the whole of Earth will be without power, and much of Starfleet is going to be lost to the universe. Really more to the galaxy, but whatever. Their plan: go back in time to save a couple of humpback whales named George and Gracie, which were extinct in the 23rd century. The point is, the probe didn't seem to foster any ill will. It had no idea what it was doing or what it was going to do when it ended up reaching the solar system, or more specifically towards Earth. That's not necessarily who I want to highlight today though, but it's to show that even if heroes are going out to fight a big bad, there might be a particular situation that they also have to fight against. In the case of the Enterprise, it was to try and save Starfleet and end the threat of Khan, to stop the Klingons again, or, well, any number of stories that the sci-fi show has started and we've kind of copied over time again and again. In the words of Kirk, how we deal with death is just as important as how we deal with life. Anyway, with those few brief examples, I think that actually covers the gambit of how a villain can be perceived, but it's far from limited to just these events. This is no different than what we've seen with games over the years. I think GT was pushing this topic off specifically for me, considering the focus I'm expected to have here today. Let me get to a game that most of you have care for on this channel. I mean, I love me some ripping and tearing just like the next guy, and good old Doom Guy can't be put down by the enemies of hell. His main enemy is, well, really just his own ammo containers and the fuel in his chainsaw, if we're being honest here. That and not enough Berserker power-ups to pick up. But in all seriousness, Doomguy continues to show what it means to spit in the face of the enemy that stands in his way. Olivia Pierce is the overall driving force to what's happening on Mars, sure, but you still get the sense that Sam Hayden isn't exactly as noble as his intentions could be, or what he wants you to believe. Then again, Doomguy's a bit of an anti-hero to begin with. In my first playthrough of Doom 2016, I really just didn't care for anyone getting in the way of me getting back to hell to stop the forces trying to pop up in front of me. AKA I didn't like anything trying to stop me from shooting the demons. Olivia continued to supply said demons to me, however, so for that I have to thank her. But by God, did I want to stop her. She made me angry to begin with and made me want to go back into the fight, no matter how many times I wanted to read the next codex entry that I found. And let me tell you, as someone that focuses on story within games, I wanted to do so. Olivia's ultimate goal was to throw demons into our existence. It wasn't about using Hell's energy, that old Argent feeling, to humanity's interest anymore. Nope. It was to bring about a new world order thanks to her push to do so. This is what's set up for what makes her a strong yet simple villain. She wants to allow for a new world order, to join in with that order and ultimately end the human race. We're still not entirely sure about the planes of Hell, yeah, but we're getting there. It's showing us slowly why Olivia wanted to do what she did. I mean, as a simple villain, hers was a lead to just eradicate us. It's debated whether Olivia was corrupted from the forces of Hell or if she willingly gave herself up. It's really unknown her overall motives. This comes to the idea of how some franchises choose their villains to be more vague and more just, this is your target, go get 'em. It all leads to a bigger force, to a bigger bad that you're meant to fight. Ultimately, that's where it feels Doom leads off for us in 2016, and of course, we've got to wait for Doom Eternal to really understand the rest of it. But that's just it. Samuel Hayden is easily one of those characters. Oh, you know the type. The ones that make you question their general purpose and how they use their minds and ways for good, but ultimately go about things in the wrong way. Basically, great ideas, awful execution. For Sam, he supplies us the means not only to enter Hell, but also to utilize the powers therein. We power up our suit and weapons using this energy, and he offers means to save humanity, or at least to stop things on Mars. While Olivia may be gone in Doom, at least at this point, her actions continue to show themselves within the franchise as it continues to grow. Meanwhile, Samuel continues to be the question force within the franchise, and continues to make me wonder what his ultimate end is going to look like. He may not be the one that wanted things like this to happen, but he certainly didn't stop them. But at least he supplied us with the means to end them. Though we probably did more than he probably would have liked to also end them. End of the day, that's the idea of a complicated villain and the contrast that both Olivia and Samuel present to us within Doom. Of all games, Doom. Funny enough, we haven't talked about the forces that we fight, but that's the thing about Hell as a whole. It's a force that we fight, and one that just wants to continue to conquer new lands, getting back into our realm since they were sealed away, possibly. It's actually pretty similar to another title that follows along with some similar feelings, one of another suited fellow by the name of Isaac Clarke. Dead Space deals with this idea of environmental enemies, ones that we don't necessarily have an ending point to, or ones that don't really have an end game that we can really decipher, or at least easily decipher. The Necromorphs are a bit closer to the enemies of Hell in Doom than you might think, but I guess an imp at least has knowledge of what it's doing. The Necromorphs act more like animals or a hive mind, which we find out that they are. Each type serves a purpose, a necessary one of the survival of the species, if you want to call them that. I don't want to dwell on this for too long, since it is meant as just a segue and another example, but Dead Space shows the importance of another ridiculous enemy that stands in our way. We'll never know if there was a thing in charge of the entirety of the necromorphs or the amount of screwed that humanity is, but, well, it was pretty evident by the end scenes in Dead Space 3 that we weren't gonna last long. Maybe it's better off dead in space. Oh, that pun was awful, and I just want more Dead Space now. There's another example of this environmental enemy or situational enemy. You can easily find it in Monster Hunter, where nature is simply there to survive and do what it needs to do, just like normal everyday life. We're there just to chop it back a little bit, remind it that we have our own place within the ecosystem. The ancients within Monster Hunter went too far, and nature pushed back with the addition of the white and crimson Fatalis. Really, the Fatalis species of dragon in general caused the end of the ancient civilizations, and we stand to constantly balance nature and technology to a degree within the franchise. But there is no enemy. There is no general attack target or need to wipe out a target in general past our own survival. It deals with situational ideas like that of the invading Seregios in Monster Hunter 4, or the Nergigante fighting against Elder Dragons, or the other several monsters that get closer to our settlements that don't belong in the environment they're within. After all, humans can be quite destructive on their own. We don't need help from dragons. Okay, I had to dig that in there somewhere. I can also dig into several other titles throughout gaming, ones like Bayonetta or Nier Automata, ones that showcase the ideas of complicated or simplistic villains, or ones that vary and evolve with time. Sometimes a villain's motives are small to start, but they grow larger because the hero is just as much an antagonist to the plans of the villain. Sometimes it's a matter of perspective. And so I'm going to dig into my specialty, the game that has continued to spark my interest for a few years, Destiny. Now hang on, I know some of you are going to click off thanks to the hyperbolic nature of the game, but give me a chance here. The writers of Bungie have created something you may not necessarily realize or haven't necessarily dug into, and I want to at least highlight some of the basic forces within it. There is the general idea of light versus dark. There is the general idea of humanity needing to survive after great catastrophe struck. At the end of the day, that's the case for one other species that we come in contact with, while a few others show their own brand of reasoning to fight us and claim the Traveler, the big white ball in the sky that you see everywhere, for their own purposes. The Fallen, or as their original name is, the Eliksni, are a group that tends to stand equal to us in the system. They had the Traveler's blessing some time ago before we did. They had the gifts of the light before we did, and knowledge of how that light works. That is, until the Hive, another force, we'll talk about them in a moment, attacked and nearly wiped them out. This was an event they called the Whirlwind, and it's left them without a lot of leadership. This is also similar to what we could call the Collapse as well, if you're familiar with that terminology in Destiny. They turned into scavengers. But this is by perspective of survival, something we don't realize about the Fallen until some time later on. They attack humanity because they are generally jealous. They want the Traveler for their own purposes and feel that humanity isn't worthy of it. Over time, this outlook has changed for a few within the Fallen species, but largely they all want us to kind of just say forget it to the Traveler, and they want it all for themselves. The Hive are the next race that we come in contact with. You'll remember such hits as We've Woken the Hive, delivered by Dinklebot and Nolanbot from Destiny 1. Good times. Anyway, the Hive make up a market of genocidal combatants. They too are after the Traveler, but they're after it more to wipe it out. They represent a force of cosmic nature. One that doesn't care about you not being ready for the coming storm that's about to wipe out your house. They represent a force that will just wash over whatever they can. They believe in a simple idea, one that could be related to Darwin, I guess. The strong shall survive. The ideas of sword logic are the ultimate antithesis of this, whereby taking down an enemy, you absorb that enemy's life force for your own. You grow more powerful from the killing of another, more powerful or not. In some ways, this is reducing the Hive to their basest, as there are other factions within that cause us to see different thinking within their ranks, but I think it sums up for our purposes today. Then comes the war machine, the Cabal. What we didn't realize was the Cabal showcase the opposite of us in a way, or show what we may have thrived to be. The Cabal are an empire, and yes, this is where you can insert the Warhammer 40k jokes. They are the Space Marine force that you see in the game, though their design is most definitely more of that, like, chaos. The feather frills are a real dead giveaway. This army is looking to use and add the Travelers' power to their own. That's really the end-all for that reasoning, but they're jealous for another reason. The Travelers skipped over the Cabal Empire entirely. For reasons unknown, or simply because power begets more power, the Cabal really wanted the light and knowledge of it. Lastly comes the Vex, the last major enemy, and they represent another side of things entirely. They don't want the Traveler. They seem to need us as Guardians for a reason. They have different abilities from the rest, either of time travel or complete galactic travel, but they have the ability to machinoform planets. They've done this with a bulk of Venus and have completely done so with Mercury. There are reasons that they were stopped on Venus and haven't continued to do so in our system further than what they've done so far, but there's also things going on with Nessus as introduced with Destiny 2 and other planets that are kind of called into questions and what the Vex are ultimately doing. The reason the Vex are quite possibly the most diabolical of all species in Destiny is thanks to their drive. We see it in the Curse of Osiris DLC from last December, where the Vex are after convergence, an idea we also hear about in Dead Space. It's like I brought up Dead Space for a reason or something. Osiris himself, I think, says it best. The Vex are not after light or dark to prevail. There can only be one general means left over, and that is one entity, without any kind of individual thought. By all accounts, they represent the largest threat to us as Guardians and humanity, even if we see the Hive or others win over us. To me, these enemies are complicated, their ideals driven by different reasons. We have to understand those reasons as Guardians and as humanity in order to stop the forces that harrow Earth and the last safe city. The Fallen are after the Traveler to simply survive. They feel it's their only way to do so. The Hive are out to wipe out the light. They're there to destroy and kill in their own way. The Cabal want to utilize the powers of the Traveler and take it from us for their own means. The Vex don't care for any of that. So you get these conflicting ideas, especially when you throw in the Guardians as a faction as well. The Light Users, Light Survivors, Light Destroyers, Light Wanters, and an end to all things. For me, this shows the absolute total idea of what it means to use or be with the light or the dark within the universe that is Destiny. I can only hope it continues to tell that tale as it does for those that enjoy it. In the end, villains make you push to play a game and continue to experience it. If they're not the only reason, that they're a large reason for it. You constantly go against them within the games you play, and they constantly make you push to end whatever mad goals they may have, or perhaps just push them off for the time being. In the case of Destiny, perhaps you find some common ground. In the cases of Dead Space or Doom, perhaps it's just you needing to push back against something for survival. Or in the end, it could just be you needing to find balance with nature. Whew, I think I'll leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed my take on villains within video games and what they've meant to me over time. I use Destiny so heavily since it showcases a general overview of all the enemies we've seen in literature and entertainment over the years, but it certainly doesn't stop there. After all, the side of the villain and the side of the hero could just be a matter of perspective. I want to thank GT for having me on and for you guys being such gracious hosts to listen to me this far. I know this is not your normal type of content you receive from Gamertron, but I do hope you still find it enjoyable. End of the day, you guys know the buttons to press to listen to more from Gamertron, but if you feel the need to show up and say hi over on my side of things, again, my name is Beard Grizzly, and as my normal farewell is, no matter when or where you are, I'll see you next space time. Take care.